He is a perfectionist, a trait that practically everyone we've talked about possesses. They are meticulous. Jack Nicholson had an illustrious 50-year career and 12 Oscar nominations. However, his acting was not his greatest secret. It has to do with Ray, his son. People observed the striking similarity for decades. The same expression, the same ferocity, even the same unsettling smile. Ray resisted it, opting for a profession other than performing. However, he eventually ceased running in 2024, was astonished by his breakthrough performance. Furthermore, Jack's recent admission of what he anticipated demonstrates that he was aware that this day would come. The secret that started Jack Nicholson's life was so significant that it followed him for almost 40 years without him realizing it. He was born on April 22, 1937, in Neptune, New Jersey, into what appeared to be a typical household, but the truth was concealed beneath well-crafted lies. He was raised thinking that June Nicholson was his older sister who had left home to pursue her goals in show business. And Ethel Mae Nicholson was his mother. Lorraine, his aunt, was even introduced. As a sister, everyone, including friends, neighbors, and extended relatives, got along. The quiet was never broken by anyone. Even before he was born, the plan had been established. To ensure that no one back home would learn the truth, June gave birth to him in New York City, which is distant from Neptune. It was a 36 unwritten agreement. The deception began while June was only 17 years old. After leaving Neptune for New York, she was hired as an Earl Carroll dancer, which at the time was a desirable career for any young woman. However, she later became pregnant. A married guy called Don, a former boyfriend who would later assert paternity, was the father. When June acknowledged that she wasn't totally certain who the father was, the situation grew. Being an unmarried mother was socially disastrous in 1937. It might ruin entire futures, professions, and reputations. June returned home in embarrassment, gave birth to her child, and consented to spend the rest of her life as his sister. That secret remained hidden until 1974. At the age of 37, Nicholson was on a high after finishing Chinatown and doing 15 movies in a short period of time. Time magazine was fact-checking every aspect of his life in preparation for a big cover feature. Researchers discovered strange gaps in the records during this process. They told Nicholson something implausible when they called him. It was possible that the man he believed to be his father was still alive. June was his biological mother, and Ethel Mae was his grandma. The revelation occurred just prior to the release of Chinatown, a film about unsettling family secrets. It was nearly impossible to believe the irony. A guy calls me and tells me my father's alive, that Ethel Mae wasn't my mother, and that June was my mother, Nicholson remarked over the phone to his uncle Shorty when he first heard it. I've never heard anything so messed up. Shorty initially denied it until acknowledging its veracity. June and Ethel Mae had both passed away by that point. Nicholson would never get the opportunity to question them about their actions. Long before this, in 1955, Nicholson began his career in Hollywood as a male clerk in the animation division of MGM. He was employed by Tom and Jerry's creators, Joseph Barbara and William Hanna. He was even given the opportunity to work as an animator, but he declined. Rather, his first audition was the result of a fortuitous encounter in the mailroom. On August 18, 1958, he made his big-screen debut in The Crybaby Killer. He was 20 years old. The teen who kidnaps a mother, an infant, was the subject of the movie. It was condensed to just 1 hour and 21 minutes and released as a double feature with another movie. Before making a comeback on DVD in 2006, it was a box office failure and disappeared for decades. Nicholson nearly drowned in 1963 while filming The Nightmare with Boris Karloff. The weight dragged him under while he was dressed in a bulky military outfit for an ocean scene. The film, which had 5 different directors and began as a 2-day shot using unused sets, took 9 months to complete. Its tumultuous production contributed to its cult status. Nicholson got to know actress Sandra Knight on that same doomed production. Jennifer, their daughter, was born in 1963 after their 1962 marriage. It lasted until 1968 and was his only marriage. Low-budget horror films and difficulties landing a consistent acting job were common during those years. By 19, he started writing as well. He earned much-needed money by writing the script for the psychedelic movie The Trip, which was about LSD. He co-wrote Head for the Monkeys the following year. Up to his breakthrough performance in Easy Rider in 1969, these endeavors kept him afloat. He never looked back after that. Rip Torn was seated across from Peter Fonda and Dennis Hopper in a New York diner at the beginning of 1968. They were discussing a recently released film. For Torn, a drunken lawyer named George Hansen had been written specifically for the part. However, in the midst of casual talk and beverages, Hopper began to rant about rednecks he had encountered while researching potential locales in the South. As a proud Texan, Torn took it seriously. The atmosphere became tense. The words became more incisive. There were voices. Hopper then reached for a steak knife. Damage was done, but no one was harmed. On that night, Tor left the project. Years later, in 1994, Hopper admitted to Jay Leno that Tor was the one who had stabbed him. Tor was enraged. After suing Hopper, he cleaned his name and received about $1 million. However, Jack Nicholson benefited from his loss. Nicholson took over after Torn left. His life would be altered by the part. Nicholson's shrill, squeaky Texas drawl against George Hansen was memorable. The movie was stolen from its own stars by the picture of him wearing a football helmet, smiling, and drinking. When the Academy announced his candidacy for Best Supporting Actor, he was 32 years old. The film's production cost was a mere $360,000. Here it was at the Oscars, though Nicholson was more than just a name in low-budget movies anymore. Hollywood had to take him seriously all of a sudden. When Easy Rider debuted in theaters on July 14, 1969, it evolved into more than just a film. For a restless generation, it served as a mirror. Young Americans are moving away from conformity, tradition, and the Vietnam War. The counterculture and the formal world were connected by Nicholson's George Hansen, a man who truly belonged to neither but understood both. The movie inspired fashion, music, and lifestyle trends. It contributed to the beginning of the new Hollywood age in which riskier, smaller ventures could compete with major studio films, and that revolt was now associated with Nicholson's visage. He had previously been limited to tiny TV roles and Roger Corman B films, often for as little as a few hundred. That was altered in a single summer by Easy Rider. With $41.7 million in the U.S. alone, the film brought in $60 million worldwide. Payrolls for Nicholson increased to 6 digits. Your name becomes a brand, he said to his agency, expressing his desire for unconventional assignments. You take on 31 different responsibilities and become Campbell's soup. He started to be compared to James Dean and Marlon Brando. In Easy Rider, Nicholson did more than merely play the part. He assisted in editing it after it was shot. Dennis Hopper needed to craft a narrative out of 80 hours of uncut video. After his character came, Nicholson worked closely with editor Henry Jagham, concentrating on the parts. It was uncommon for a supporting actor to be thus involved. It provided Nicholson with an inside look at filmmaking, information that would be useful to him in the years to come. In 1970, 5 easy pieces followed. Robert Dupia, portrayed by Nicholson, was a former pianist who was unable to fit in anywhere and was hiding among oil workers. To him, it was personal. Reviewers hailed it as a first for male characters. Men on screen rarely shown such unbridled emotion. Nicholson was nominated for 4 Oscars, including Best Actor. One scene turned into a legend, echoing a genuine fight Nicholson had at a Sunset Strip eatery years prior. Dupe orders toast in a diner using a slew of ridiculous substitutes. Carnal Knowledge was released in 1971. Mike Nichols's audacious and direct examination of aging, sex, and dissatisfaction. For more than 25 years, Nicholson portrayed Jonathan from confident college student to resentful, helpless man. For its period, the language was alarming. The part was one of his top 3 performances. Next came Nicholson's role as Navy lifer Billy Badass Badowski in The Last Detail 1973, in which he escorted a young Marine to prison after he stole $40 from a charity box. After accounting for inflation, that came to almost $277. Nicholson, who received his 3rd consecutive Oscar nomination, lent the role wit, rebellion, and a touch of kindness. Chinatown, which debuted in 1974, was a masterpiece. Nicholson portrayed Jake Chittis, a private investigator who unearthed a network of corruption and familial secrets. The movie received 11 Oscar nominations. There were pyrotechnics on the set. When a game went into double overtime, Nicholson, a die-hard Lakers supporter, once held the entire team waiting for more than an hour. Basketball descent, Roman Polanski rushed into his trailer, took the TV, and flung it out. Nevertheless, the suspense seemed to drive the movie. One of the best films of the new Hollywood era is still Chinatown. Jack Nicholson lived Randall McMorey, not just portrayed him. He spent enough time inside a real mental institution to feel its walls closing in order to get ready. He closely examined patients, noting their movements, speech patterns, and tics. When no one was there, he listened to the morning's gloomy calm and the ward's little noises at night. After spending weeks inside, Nicholson started to wonder what sanity actually meant, because the distinction between acting and reality became so hazy. When the cameras stopped, crew members saw that he didn't always leave McMurphy behind. That erratic energy persisted in him even during breaks, as though the figure had moved in and closed the door. By March 29, 1976, the risk had been profitable. After 4 prior nominations, Nicholson eventually won his first Oscar for Best Actor at the 48th Academy Awards. I guess this proves there are as many nuts in the Academy as anywhere else, he added, smiling, as he stood on stage for less than a minute. The McMurphy moment was ideal, swift, irreverent, and unforgettable. He solidified his spot among the greats by defeating some of the most formidable opponents the Best Actor category had ever seen. However, it was more difficult to leave MC Murphy behind than to earn the statue. Even when Nicholson was not on site, friends and relatives noticed glimmers of the persona. Both the edge and the charm were present. Mick Murphy was an erratic character who could try to strangle someone one moment and smile the next. Nicholson's actual demeanor was infused with such gloom, making it difficult to distinguish between the performance and the man. His loved ones started to fear that the confrontation and rebellion weren't staged. No longer. The movie itself became well known. On a budget of only $3 million, it made almost $18 million in the US after its November 20, 1975, release. It surpassed Jaws as the year's second biggest grossing film. It accomplished something that no other movie in history has ever done at the Oscars. It took home all 5 major prizes: Best Film, Best Actor, Best Director, and Best Screenplay Adaptation. Furthermore, MC Murphy never quite left Nicholson himself. Many of his best performances were modeled after this part. A Few Good Men's savage defiance, The Shining, and even the jagged edges of Melvin Udall in As Good as It Gets all displayed traces of McMurphy and Jack Torrance's insanity. He emerged as the most charismatic outlaw on the screen, the man who could enchant you while demolishing everything in his path. In addition to permanently altering his career, McMurphy may have also altered him. Obsessiveness was a well-known trait of Stanley Kubrick. That preoccupation became something the actors and crew of The Shining would never forget on the set. More than 400 takes are allegedly used for the scene in which Jack Nicholson smashes through the toilet door. Though marginally different, the truth is still quite harsh. Just that scene, which shattered 60 actual doors, took 3 days to shoot. Kubrick desired excellence. Nicholson was forced to spend hours at a time in a state of complete insanity. With a single question in mind, the filmmaker persisted. How can we surpass the previous record in this regard? This was not an isolated incident. The Guinness World Record for the most takes in a single scene was even broken by Kubrick. A scene in the kitchen was recorded 148 times. Nicholson referred to the entire procedure as the most discouraging event in his professional life. It was more than just the monotonous repetition. Kubrick refused to accept substitutes. Nicholson was always tense because he had to be present for lighting setups as well. Jack Torrance's acting felt horrifyingly real as a result of that pressure. Then came the statement that would go down in horror history as the most well-known. This Johnny wasn't in the script or Stephen King's book. It was taken from The Tonight Show by Nicholson, where Ed McMahon used to introduce Johnny Carson. It had been heard in a familiar and comfortable setting by millions of Americans. Nicholson turned it into a threatening statement. Kubrick nearly cut it out of the movie, but he realized it was too strong to lose when he saw it through the broken wood. Johnny Carson no longer owned the line. It belonged to the horror genre. There was a lot of life on set. At times, the environment felt hazardous because of Kubrick's mind games combined with Nicholson's method acting. Nicholson would push himself into a fury by pacing and swinging the axe prior to takes. Shelley Duvall's hair began to come out due to extreme stress. She once held chunks of it in her palms and showed them to Kubrick. Kubrick deliberately brought her to tears because he thought that only genuine fear would appear on TV. Crew members occasionally became concerned about what they were witnessing because Nicholson's anger, whether genuine or fake, was so compelling. However, Kubrick made sure to safeguard one person on the scene at all costs: Danny Lloyd, age 6. The youngster had no idea that he was in a scary film. He was informed by Kubrick that a family drama was being filmed. To ensure Lloyd wouldn't witness anything frightful, life-size dummies were used in place of the performers whenever a scene appeared to be unpleasant. He only watched footage that had been extensively manipulated and lacked any frightening elements. When he eventually saw the entire film as a teenager years later, he discovered that his on-screen father was attempting to murder him with an axe and that the twins he had played with were ghosts. It was dangerous for Nicholson to accept this position. He had already won an Oscar in 1984, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and a few years later, he would win it again for Terms of Endearment. Horror was not regarded as a serious art form. It was frequently viewed as lowbrow entertainment by critics.